about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't lie!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're going to get.
For this episode, I sit down and chat with Phil LaDuca at his brand new LaDuca Shoes location on 45th Street, just west of 10th Avenue. We talk about everything from his new location of a beautiful store you have to go check out if you're in New York City, to his life path, dancing, injury, creation of shoes. It's really quite a fascinating conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did having the conversation with Phil LaDuca. Keep on keeping on. We're back. I'm Clayton Howe, and today with me is Phil LaDuca.
Hey,
Phil,
Clayton, how you doing?
Great. I'm wonderful, and I'm loving this new location here on 45th between 10th and 11th Avenue.
Yes,
in
thank you.
Midtown. We were talking beforehand. I was asking you why did you choose this, and this location, and you had mentioned that it's more the location choosing you.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that intuition come from in your life?
What we have established and what I've been very fortunate of having created is a niche. So just opening a store was never a consideration. We first opened on 9th Avenue between 39th and 40th, really the heart of Hell's Kitchen. We were the first shoe store in 50 years to open in Hell's Kitchen, and was credited with being one of the innovators or first to come into regentrifying Hell's Kitchen, because this is 20 years ago when I started there.
Yeah.
Who would have thought of opening a dance shoe store in Hell's Kitchen? And it was just more a matter of convenience and opportunity. I had lived in the building, and the storefront became available, and it was a matter of convenience, because at the time I was doing the shoes out of my apartment. And literally, my friends were saying, Phil, you can't have Twyla Tharp and these stars coming into your apartment. You have to get a legitimate business.
Yeah.
And probably later on we'll talk about it when you say, when you inquire in regard to when were those moments of hesitation. And that probably was the first and only time I hesitated, because I had never owned a business. I had never started a company. Initially, I had created the first flexible character shoe, and I brought it to a dance company who shall go unnamed, and they literally said to me, oh, so a stupid dance teacher, dancer, performer created something we didn't? And when they saw the product, they went, oh, this is different. And then it became a matter of pride, where they didn't want to admit that somebody else created, they didn't. So an opportunity gone by that worked out in my favor, because I would have sold this design and patent to them for really nothing in today's market and world and economy. I would have jumped for joy, having been a performer / moving into choreographer and director at the time, and having a thought of having this windfall on an idea that I had come up with would have been heaven sent. And thankfully they ruined the opportunity, and I thought, okay, fine, I'll do this on my own. So it was kind of an uppance thing of, if they are going to be indignant about this, then okay, I'm just going to do it on my own. And literally, I put, at the time, in my mid-40s, my life savings of $40,000 I invested in the first shipment of shoes, which was only one style, a woman's Oxford lace-up flexible character tap shoe. And that was my beginning And I just gave Allison Elner, the owner of Broadway Dance Center, her and her father had started Broadway Dance Center, 35-year anniversary just last week, and I gave Allison a LaDuca Lifetime Achievement Award because she gave me the opportunity, gave me a little desk that I could lock up and push against the wall and have my shoes in it, and then I'd push it out. This was after I had back surgery, came back from Vienna where I had popped the disc out of my back choreographing for the Vienna Folks Opera Ballet. So I was recuperating, thinking, what am I going to do? I can't keep going on with my life here. With that, I'm injured and I have to recuperate and recover. But aside from that, how much is my body going to be able to take? So this was the turning point of my career, of going, where are you going with your life? Where physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it. And it was that leap of faith. I'm just going to step out there and see if the ground meets me. And that's what I did, investing at $40,000. Allison gave me this little booth, put my shoes up there, and the dancers would come by, and most of them were like, oh, these are interesting, they're kind of neat, but who are you? And a lot of them knew me as a dancer, a performer, choreographer, teacher, but they knew nothing. There was nothing known out there about LaDuca. And I will always say, my father didn't leave me a company, didn't leave me. He's still with us, God bless. But he didn't. I didn't inherit a company. I didn't inherit a brand. There was no brand. There was no LaDuca. But I will always be grateful that he gave me $1 million name. I think LaDuca just seems it clicks, it works.
Yeah.
And especially that the shoes are made in Italy, which it's that whole. I wish I could take more credit for doing a full-blown business plan of really knowing what I was doing. I did this totally on the fly, by the seat of my pants. Just everything that came along, and I guess the saying that would be most apropos is that ignorance is bliss. I didn't know any better. And if I look back on it, I might not do it or do it the way I did, but I don't think so. And like most people will say that, let me see if I could get this one off there. That most people, when they say they have no regrets, and if you're in a position like this, talking to you, doing an interview, you must have done something right. So how can you go back and say, oh, I would change this? I would change it. Of course, you'd always change things. There's always things that you would do differently, but instead of looking backwards in that regard, I think you have to look at where you are at and be grateful to where you have gotten, and know that the road that you traveled, no matter how difficult or the obstacles in it or the pitfalls, it brought you to where you are now. And so go from there rather than look back with regrets or say, I wish I would have, I could have. That's why it's called the past.
Yes. Because it's going back to the beginning of creating that, having that lock-up desk at Broadway Dance Center. Why a tap shoe?
I started as a classical ballet dancer in Chicago and went and tore my knee out, had ACL surgery, split my meniscus, and somebody suggested that I go into jazz, musical theater, and South Side of Chicago kid, not that the classical ballet is popular on the South Side of Chicago, I just fell in love with the art. So I really didn't know a lot about musical theater, and I had sung in rock and roll bands, and so it seemed an easy transition for me that, oh, you get to sing and dance at the same time. And I had seen in my childhood movies like Singing in the Rain, The Bandwagon, Easter Parade, and always thought that looked so easy. And that was the brilliance of Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and the Ginger Rogers and the Ann Millers, that they looked like they were doing nothing, walking on air, and it was effortless.
Effortless, yeah.
And it wasn't until the first show that I auditioned for was a West Side Story production of a community theater on the south side of Chicago, around Archer and Ashland. And it was my first introduction into musical theater, and I got the role of Tony, and that really hooked me. So West Side Story has always played an incredible, strong impression upon my life and career. And in 2001, when they had the 40th anniversary showing at Radio City for the West Side movie, which was made in '61, I got to meet Russ Tablin and George Chakiris and Richard Beamer, Tony, Riff, Bernardo. I was meeting my idols, and when I was face to face with Russ Tablin and looking at him, and I said, "Mr. Tablin, you have no idea what this means to me to meet you, having idolized you and wanting to be so inspired from you, that I got into musical theater, and now I have this company that I'm able to still be a vibrant part of the community." And literally, Russ Tablin looked me in the eye and he said, "No, you have no idea what this means to me to have you say that," which to me showed the hubris and the humbleness of someone of that caliber, that recognizes the fact of how blessed his life was, and to be able to continue to share that 40 years later was also a great impression upon me, that these people that are so high on a pedestal to us as performers, that once you meet them one-on-one, it's like, wow, these are just cool people. Not to use the phrase cool with Riff, it's kind of a cliche. But one of the exciting things that we're doing, that we're knee-deep in, shall we say, and with Brian Bustos, my custom shoe manager, is dealing right now with West Side Story revival. It's ironic to me that West Side Story played such a big part in my life from my childhood. Probably without West Side Story, the movie, I would not be in musical theater. And then to come full circle to have Paul Tazewell come to us for Shoes for this iconic remake with Steven Spielberg, there is no above these guys. There's nothing being. You can't say, well, then we're going to aim higher. I mean, this is it.
Yeah.
And to be associated with it at all is my childhood dream. That would say, how could I ask for anything more outside of being in the movie, of course. But they didn't ask me to audition.
But that's so full circle for you.
Yeah, totally.
That's the show that.
Yeah.
Growing up south side of Chicago, what did you learn about work ethic from your parents, or kindness from your parents?
Well, very blue collar. Very working class immigrants. My father was born in Sicily, came over on the boat. My mother, the youngest of 9, Irish family, and very. Chicago is called the city that works. And I learned at an early age, yes, it works. It works hand in hand with the politicians and the other boys. The other boys. And that was a big part of growing up. I knew a lot of people, whether related or in the neighborhood, or growing up with a lot of people who were associated with some organizations that were not exactly on the legal side.
Yeah.
And that introduction of the politics and the government and the city workers and the organized outfits, how they interacted and worked, and later I saw in Vegas all of this. It's kind of like watching my childhood of watching Casino or Goodfellas.
Both great movies.
Yes, yeah, and those are the kind of characters. I mean, I remember taking my girlfriend at the time to go see Raging Bull, and I said, "Yeah, these are the kind of guys that I grew up with." She never went out with me again after that.
That's very great.
Yeah, nice to know you. So the toughness of that, which you would seem kind of as counterintuitive in regard to shoe design or growing up in musical theater or a classical ballet dancer.
Yeah.
And yet I saw the beauty and the toughness. Our dear David Winters from West Side Story just passed, and David wrote a book called Tough Guys Do Dance. And that is what West Side Story showed me. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, there was street gangs, racial violence. It showed me a way out of that you can be cool and tough and dance and sing. That's what gave me the inspiration, because otherwise I would not have the courage to challenge that norm. But having gone into a rock band at an early age, in my early teens, like 14, and getting that approval in the neighborhood from the older tough guys is that, oh yeah, we love when you sing Soul Man and these kinds of songs. So that acceptance gives you a freedom to be more liberal, and then from there going into more singing in lounges and going into dance. That I happened to do a show where there were a lot of dancers involved, and I thought, wow, that looks pretty. I like that. I like what they're doing, and it's a lot of pretty girls in here. I think I should be in this room, and that's really what catapulted me to go, I should start dance. And so I started to go to some ballet schools that the girls were going to, and fell in love with ballet. And the dance teacher, Loretta Rozak, really inspired me. I was all wrong. I was very muscular. In the south side of Chicago, you want to build muscle because it's predatorial there. So
you gotta protect yourself.
Yeah. So that I had the wrong body shape, and she encouraged me to continue and change my body shape, and it took obviously many years to do that. Unfortunately, trying to force it at a late age for dancing, when I was 18 and 19, to try and force the muscles and the bone structure to turn out, I put too much stress and tore my ACL and meniscus, and that's when I transitioned into jazz, where I found Lou Conte and Hubbard Street Dance Company in Chicago. And Lou introduced me to jazz, theater jazz, and jazz. And so that combination then led me to Muni Opera in St. Louis for summer stock, where I was able to utilize not just my dancing, but my singing, which again, that musical theater is the only genre that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you add on the acting. So the singing, dancing, and acting, and they all seem to come together for me. I came to New York in 1979 when I received a Drama Desk Award in 2017, so unexpectedly, and it was beautiful that they honored me with this, as they made a special category as a contributor for the arts and the entertainment industry for what I have done over the years with Broadway and the concert performers and movies. And at my acceptance, Susan Hilferty, the phenomenal designer for Wicked and many other shows, was my presenter and gave me a great introduction. And I started off my speech by saying, in 1979, a young novice came to New York City with 2 suitcases and $800 in his pocket. A year later, he was dancing on Brigadoon on Broadway for Agnes DeMille. A year later, he was swashbuckling in Pirates of Penzance for Graziella Danielle, with an unknown at the time in the role of the Pirate King, Calvin Klein. I mean Kevin Klein. I did that, and I said to people, I spoofed Kevin because we had done Pirates together, and he was doing Present Laughter last year at the time, and I went to see him, and afterwards I went to go backstage, and his dresser said, "Oh, Kevin's not seeing anyone tonight." So I got back at him at the drama desk course.
You gotta get back, right? That's funny.
But Kevin has an incredible wit. He's just what a wit! Really a great guy to be around. So entertaining.
Yeah. As I look around, because we're in the store right now, as I look around behind me, the smorgasbord, the collection, the individuality of each of these shoes,
The cornucopia
of color is amazing. I mean, it's amazing because, we were talking about the literally on the other side of this wall, the simplicity of the designs you have. There's just, it appears to be so simple and so few, but yet back here, what you're doing for shows is like, I mean, this is insane. This got to be very busy.
On the other side, of course, as you say, the palette is very dry with beige and black.
Yeah.
The two colors that are needed just strictly for auditions and rehearsal purposes.
Right.
The basic Fosse black and, of course, the beige chorus girl look.
Yeah.
I've added the cinnamon, which is a color for my beautiful ladies of color. It is a cinnamon hue of a brown that can cover from Asian, Latina, and Afro-American, that I wanted to make sure that they are included in our community. They're such a large, vibrant part of our community, and I felt that they had been ignored, asking to wear black. No one's skin is black. No one's skin is really beige, but the beige tights cover that. So I've created the cinnamon line, and it really is beautiful on the ladies. Yeah. But other than that, what you're talking about, coming over to the custom side, of course, right now we're looking at shoes for Anastasia in a red swirl pattern. Yeah. We're looking at a pink foil for Glinda, for Wicked, the red maroon burgundy suede pump for a West Side movie. We see Meryl Streep's shoe from Julia. We see the Ghost Showgirls platform 6-inch heels from Follies for Greg Barnes. Paula Abdul's shoe, Pink's shoe. It's Cheetah, Rivera doing shoes for My Love Cheetah. And Katy Perry's boot, her cat boot with the toes that I did in there. So you see the pinks and the greens and the oranges, and it's so yes, living in a palette that is, when I work with the brilliance of Asanto Laquesto and William Ivy Longs and Susan Hilferty, our dear Marty Pakladinis, who was a great mentor for me. Tough love. Marty was tough. Marty taught me. He didn't use me for 3 years. Every time I was like an apprentice that would come and show his work, and Sensei would say, "Not good enough, grasshopper." Yeah, I was not good enough, and he would tell me, "Never present anything that is not perfect." And I'd keep bringing him things, and he'd say, no. And it's because of him that I learned, don't think you can show somebody something and they can imagine it. It's not that they don't have imagination. Quite the contrary. They have no time. They're not going to hire me to do the shoes to teach me. That's not their job. They're not going to use my shoes because I'm a nice guy. They're not going to jeopardize their production. Taught me the value of hard work and never accept less. So I became very hard on my factory of not accepting anything that's not perfect. And I stress that to my staff. You get to a point for a reason. The Gucci's, the Pradas, the Manolo Blahniks, the Susan Hilferdys, the Greg Barnes, the Santo Loquestos. They get to that point for a reason. And you have to understand that working with Rob Marshall and John DeLuca and Nine in Chicago, they didn't get there because people liked them. People like them because they're brilliant at what they do. And there's a difference. We all want to be liked. What I find is if you put that aside, take the ego out of the equation, do great work. If you build it, they will come. Simple as that.
Yeah. That's well said. That's really well said. Who bought your first pair of shoes?
I wish I remember her name. I could see her face. It was a gal that was taking tap class. And the reason that I started with the tap shoe, flexible tap shoe, was I had started in classical ballet. And my first show was Brigadoon on Broadway, and you wear gillies, which are basically a ballet slipper with laces up the leg. So I was still able to articulate and point her feet. Jerry Mitchell, by the way, was a fellow sword dancer with me, and we've got our Broadway debuts we had together. And most of the cast, the dancers, were from New York City Ballet, Royal Winnipeg Ballet, ABT. So we had these incredible ballet dancers. Next show I did on Broadway was Pirates of Penzance, and we had boots, but it was for the phenomenal Graziella Daniele, whose staging is brilliant, the best. Grazie's staging for musical theater is impeccable, but it wasn't. We weren't doing fouette turns. We were playing Keystone Cops and Pirates, so it is choreographed movement within the character. And that's what I learned working with Graziella, is that you don't need tricks to do good choreography and to tell a story. That you save that for specialties or for concert. But when you're a musical theater, the importance is that the story is being told, whether it's being sung, spoken, or danced, which is another icon that I worked with, Agnes DeMille, who first created the idea in Oklahoma in 1947 that the dance is actually progressing the story rather than giving the principals a break. Bring on the chorus, girls. Ba, da, da, da. And that, what happened was, when I next went, my next show was for Twyla Tharp, Singing in the Rain on Broadway. And I was the understudy for the lead role for Don Correa, incredible masculine, physical, great dancer, a real Gene Kelly-esque dancer of Sandy Duncan's husband. Sandy is also a dear friend, of talent, of course. But going from when I tried to, in the shoes we had there, I could not point my feet. And I said to the wardrobe, I can't point my feet. And they said, this isn't Swan Lake, ballet boy. And I thought, well, but wait a minute. We as Broadway dancers, we are in ballet classes every day, and we're brushing our feet, we're relevéing, half relevé, full relevé, jumps, we're coming through, articulating through the ball, the metatarsal, the arch, and imagine jumping in the air and doing 2 revolutions and coming down flat-footed. Your knees are going to just buckle, your back's going to snap. And that's what I've realized on Broadway. You're asking, I mean, we're dancing for Fosse, for Twyla Tharp, Jerome Robbins, and they're asking us to do this amazing, wonderful, fabulous choreography. But you're talking about Touron layers and fouettes and slides and jumps and battements. What about the feet? If you're giving us shoes that don't give, something else is going to give. The ankle, the knee, the back. So that's my first realization of there's something wrong with the shoes. And then 25 years later, because of a back injury, because of something negative, a positive came out, that I realized I had to make a transition. And I said, aha, that idea of a flexible character shoe. And it germinated 25 years earlier and didn't present itself until I physically could not be a choreographer teacher at that point. So that's how it manifested. Bob Audie was a mentor of mine, phenomenal tap musical theater teacher, phenomenal tap teacher. Paul Draper was one of his mentors, and Bob would have us do a tap class in tap shoes. We would do a ballet bar, brush, adagios, and doing shuffles as we're doing pliés at the bar. So I thought, and we would do wonderful little combinations where we do these little brush jump exercises and routines. And I thought, again, I'm coming through the floor and just flat-footed. How come I can't use a shoe to point my foot? So again, this is where I came along with the idea there has to be a better mousetrap. There has to be a better shoe. And that's why I started with the tap, because I became a tapper with Singing in the Rain. What had happened prior was I was auditioning for Dancing, Bob Fosse's Dancing at the time, and it actually was Chet Walker, the brilliant teacher, choreographer, Chet, who said to me, "We love your jazz dancing, and you've got a good voice, but we want you to cover Wayne Salento's track, which is the tap break in Sing, Sing, Sing." And I was a ballet jazz dancer. I was not a tap dancer. I'd never tap danced. I didn't know what tap dancing was outside of the Nicholas Brothers or Gene Kelly on movies. So I was so angry that I lost a job of doing dancing for Bob Fosse that I dedicated myself to become a tap dancer, and I did so much that I became the understudy for the lead role of the Gene Kelly, Don Lockwood role on Broadway. So again, you give me a negative, I turn it into a positive.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
Comes from the streets of Chicago. Yeah.
You need positivity.
Oh, you have to. You have to find an alternative. When you're presented with an obstacle, like someone who's a foot taller than you and 40 pounds heavier than you, and they want to do damage to you, you learn to improvise very quickly, and that getting out of situations that present themselves that are menacing, or coming into life out of that, everything seems so much easier. So that nothing is as dramatic or as emotionally taxing as something like that, which is why there's one of the gals that I worked with in Pirates, Nancy Hyken, has become a film producer, and she has talked with me about doing a movie, a documentary about my life because of growing up under those circumstances. And I had brought up to her that the neighborhood I grew up in was where Jennifer Hudson's family, two of her family members were killed in the same neighborhood I grew up in over drugs. And Derrick Rose, the NBA Chicago Bull basketball player, he grew up literally blocks away from me and learned basketball in a park I used to play in, Murray Park on the south side of Chicago. And I said, wouldn't it be great if I connected with Jennifer and Derek and say, there's still so much continuing violence and killings and drugs in that area for the last 30 years now. Maybe we can try to find some foundation and do some scholarships, like I went from this neighborhood, from the south side, like Jennifer did, like Derek did, on to something else. Maybe we can do some scholarships for these kids and bring them to introduce them to the theater and the arts and get them out of this environment.
Yeah. Do you still have family
in the southwest suburbs? Okay. They're in the southwest suburbs of Chicago.
Logistical question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been one of these shows that has been more challenging than another in terms of design
Well,
or
certainly.
creation?
Well, right out the bat, it jumps up. Kinky boots.
Kinky boots?
It's life in imitating art, of course. When you, the movie and the premise was that this fellow and a staunchy conservative shoe company is presented with that the company's losing money, going out of business, and he's faced with the fact of, I have to put all these workers out of business, and I don't want to do that, but we're losing money, so how do I make that happen? And it just so happens that this gal, Lola, comes into his life and says, you need to make shoes for drag queens. And he's like, we make conservative dress shoes for men. And that challenge of going, how do we do platform, thigh-high, stiletto heels for men, doing Jerry Mitchell's incredible choreography. We first started where I made a pair of thigh-high red patent leather platform 6-inch stiletto boots for Jerry Mitchell, so that he could feel it and choreograph, so that he knows what he's asking his dancers to do.
Yeah.
And Billy Porter, who's become just the fashion icon right now, love Billy. So that the challenge of not just doing in the movie, they lip sync and strut and touch to back and forth. On Broadway, they're doing botmas and slide. Yeah, they're ripping it up, as Jerry likes to say, full out. They're going full out.
Oh yeah.
So that was, of course, the biggest challenge.
Wow. As we wrap up this conversation here, I'm curious, is there a common piece of incorrect advice that you've heard in your field or in life? Does anything come to mind?
In a roundabout way, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but the gist of it is listening to what other people say. If you listen to what other people say, you'll never go anywhere. People, whether they're just not knowledgeable, whether they're in a different field, whether they're in a bad mood, whether they don't really know what they're talking about, doesn't matter. Don't let anybody talk you out of your dream or what it is you want to accomplish, because you're going to find many more detractors than supporters. And it doesn't matter if you start alone, because every idea starts alone. And it doesn't matter. I started a company a full year on my own. Didn't have a worker. I remember sitting in the store on 9th Avenue with my feet up on the desk, looking out the window, wondering, what am I doing? And we have probably 10 employees now, and this is small. We're small. You know, I can't compete with the large international conglomerates and corporations that do the dancewear, and I don't care to. When people say, "Oh, they're your competition," I say, "No, there's no such thing as competition. Competition is for sports. This is an art. It's an art form. It'd be saying that that Monet and Rodin are in competition. What are they in competition for? Are there awards for sculptor and for pastels? There's no award. Well, there's Tony Awards. Unfortunately, there are no awards for shoes, a category. But again, I was so fortunate and blessed that Dramades created one, and grateful for that. But again, don't let people influence you that knocks you off your path. Stay on that path if you believe in it, because it will come true.
Yeah. I mean, I happen to subscribe to that, so I really like that you're sharing that. I'm curious, what do you do when you're not doing all of this? What do you do? What's like for fun? How do you relax? What's your...
Ooh, well, I try to do yoga every day. This,
Okay.
of course, we just finished the build out for this new store on 45th, and it's 2,300 square feet. This was a garage. It was an auto mechanic garage, body repair shop. And it was just, they gutted it, and it was just bare concrete floor and walls and ceiling. So to take this from scratch was also challenging, but a great fun. But it is really, and moving from 10 years from another place over here has been very arduous and difficult. I haven't been able to really get downtime. A little secret that I'll share, I physically do something. Whether it's walking, whether it's hiking. I do yoga and hike. I live in L.A. and Saturday tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary. My lovely wife, Fun, and I. Thank you. And we try to do yoga at least 5 to 6 days a week, and hiking. When weather is good, that's why I live in LA. We do the pool. The pool is great therapy. I've had reconstructive knee surgery, back surgery, hip replacement. So I encourage activity. Spiritually, to meditate, is a zen for me. For mental, I do when I find time, which is very rare. I sleep about 5-6 hours a night, maybe. And when I find myself awake and it's too early, well, usually I'm texting or Skyping Italy or London because they're 6 hours ahead, 7 hours ahead. So I'm usually have business. I'll do some mind exercises. There's some online games that challenge you, word games or little challenges that I find keep you alert and keep you. So if I think, like anything, if you let one thing drag, then the other things suffer. So keeping yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually, I think, is the only way to stay healthy. You can't ignore one. I try to be incredibly healthy in my diet, which has paid off very much so, staying away from cigarettes and overindulgence of alcohols or pills and things of that nature, and a good, healthy lifestyle. And being married now for a year, and we are looking to have twins.
Knock on wood.
Yes, yeah.
That's exciting.
So that's the next chapter of my life. We'll open LaDuca Shoes in a couple of months, and then on to Ireland, and then we'll look for, knock on wood, the arrival of twins in the early next year, 2020.
And you'll give them the gift of a great name.
That's what I want. You also too, Clayton, what you want to pass on is, what am I doing this for? Where's this going to go? How the legacy? Do you just want to let it go? At the end, and I've been blessed with the people that I've worked with, and the people that come in. The accolades that they give me are just the roses, their gifts. When whether it be a Chita Rivera, whether it be a gal who just came into town and got our shoes and came back the next year to thank me because she's now a Rockette. Rolling on the floor with Catherine Zeta-Jones for doing fittings for Little Night Music and Talking Dance, sitting back off set with Kate Hudson talking about Almost Famous, waiting for her to be on set for 9. All of these things are just, one can never dream about these things or think that they will happen. So I don't want this to end for, not just for me. I of course look to retire in 3 to 5 years, but I don't want this to go with me. I'm not selfish enough to say, well, when I go, it goes. Because the dancers, it's all about them. It's all about the dancers who come here. It's always been about it. Our motif or our phrase is made by a dancer for dancers, and that's what LaDuca Shoes is.
I love it. I love this. This has been a wonderful conversation.
A pleasure.
I'm curious. Final question. Metaphorically speaking, is there a word or a phrase that you would put on a billboard for millions of people to see? I know we've had a lot of themes in this conversation. I'm just curious if there's like one in particular.
Let me ponder that 1 second. If it's a short phrase or a word that will pop up for me.
It can even be a long phrase too. It doesn't have to be short.
Let things come to you. Don't fight them. They have come to you for a reason. It may not come to you right away. It may come to you in a year. But things come to you in your life for a reason.
Things come to you in your life for a reason. I love that. And I love this conversation.
It was my pleasure, Clayton.
I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Phil LaDuca.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.